Once again, we gather in this space made sacred by our presence and our commitment. We welcome each of you, whoever you are, whomever you love, whatever the path that brought you here. I have some announcements. Super Sunday is not next week because the retreat at the mountain. Instead, Super Sunday is September 17th this month. Next week's service will be at the mountain and also live streamed. You're welcome to come to this sanctuary here if you would like to join the live streaming from this space. Spiritual Explorers will begin a new session on September 7th. The group will explore a new book by Otis Moss III entitled Dancing in the Darkness, Lessons for Thriving in Turbulent Times. This is the first Sunday of September, and we have a new charitable donation partner. Rabbit Kruger will come forward and tell us more about the family place.
Good morning. I just wanted to share a little bit about how the family place has touched my life and continues to touch the lives of families throughout the county. That's better. Their mission is to strengthen families and help build resiliency through support, education, and community building. They do this through parenting classes, support groups, facilitated play groups, and multiple collaborations with partner agencies in the county, such as Get Set Transylvania and TC Strong. I first came to know the family place in 2010 when I was fostering a fabulously out teen boy here in Brevard. As a brand new parent to a 14-year-old boy, I was overwhelmed to say the least. My wife at the time and I joined the Family Place's foster parent support group, facilitated by Wendy Manor, who had worked as a group home parent and a foster parent herself. Being a therapeutic foster parent was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And in this group, I found others who truly understood many of my struggles. Our monthly meetings were a time to vent, cry, celebrate successes, and learn from one another. Later in my life, I joined the staff of the Family Place as a children's program coordinator. I led play groups for children ages 0 to 5 and their caregivers, and that was a chance to model positive parenting, give families ideas on enriching activities for their kids, and perhaps most importantly, help families of young children find community and connection with one another. I loved my time at the Family Place. The staff there are incredibly passionate about what they do. And they're a fun and supportive team. They're amazing people who make things happen on a shoestring of a budget. Parenting can be an incredibly lonely time. Some parents who are home with young children struggle to get everyone fed, dressed, and out of the house. And the Family Place offers a place where they can come with no judgments. They can connect with other parents in the community, and their children will be engaged in productive play and even get a snack. Many people have told me that the people they met at the Family Place became their lifelong friends. Please consider donating this month to the Family Place. You can find an envelope in the offering basket or donate online through Realm. Thanks.
Rabbit, thanks for your words. I think there's lots of emotion on the surface for a lot of people today, so we'll just say that. It's all right up there. Good morning. It's time for the candles of joy and sorrow. Our much-loved ritual of lighting candles to represent deeply felt joys and sorrows brings us nearer and closer together in sharing. Please raise your hand if you'd like to share joy or sorrow aloud in this community this morning. I'll summarize your comment into the microphone so that everyone can hear, including those who are online, and we'll convey these joys and sorrows so that Reverend Bob and Loving Hearts Helping Hands can be involved in supporting what's going on. Ruthie will light a candle over here for each of you as you might speak. Would anyone like to share one?
I am very joyful for this past weekend
In your name, I'm sorry. Gail Meyer. Okay. So celebrating Bill and Gail's 38th wedding anniversary and their travels to celebrate.
Hi, I am Jama McGann, and my joy is having Catherine, back there with the earphones on, having Catherine help me with the memorial service for Tim doing the video, Tim's service coming up, and we were together twice this week, and yesterday she made me the most fantastic lunch. I've got to tell you, she made miso soup and Chinese dumplings, and I've got to tell you, she laughed at me because I don't eat mushrooms. I ate mushrooms. I don't eat tofu. I ate tofu. And it was all fantastic. I've never had them taste like that. So, Catherine is my joy.
That's great. Thank you, Jama McGann, conveying a joy for Catherine's many talents and the ways that she's enriched your life in the last few days and few weeks. Yeah.
I'm Sandy Jones. Susan River Freeman is in the process of shutting down in order to transition, and it probably will not be very long at all. So we will hold her and Elizabeth Thompson, her wife, in our thoughts and our prayers, both for this transition itself, which sometimes can be sweet, and also for the time of grieving and loss that all of us have felt in our own lives. Susan is in River, is in hospice, if I didn't say that already.
So a candle this morning for the life of River Freeman and the strength and compassion it's taking for Elizabeth to help her transition to what is next.
My island home and Rabbit's Island home still need prayers for recovery and for healing after the fires on.
So Donna from Maui here with Rabbit and Kitra, healing and prayers for folks who are really struggling on Maui still. Kitra has a joy that Birdie and Cadence are here with her this morning. Any other joys and sorrows on your hearts this morning that you'd like to speak out loud? Oh, Aaron.
It's a little much, but I can just use a little much to say, but
All right, a candle for Aaron Lausch, and what's on her heart. Do we feel complete at that for now? We'll go ahead and light a candle for all that's unspoken, and we know there's a lot that's unspoken, celebrations and sorrows in all of your hearts. And we will light a candle and honor them all in this space together. Thank you.
Let's take a moment to honor each other's inherent worth and dignity with a brief but loving greeting.
Our opening words this morning are a poem from Adrian Rich, who many of you may know, author and activist. The poem is called Resistance. Stone by stone, I pile this cairn of my intention, with the noon's weight on my back, exposed and vulnerable across the slanting fields, which I love but cannot save from floods that are to come, can only fasten down with this work of my hands, these painfully assembled stones in the shape of nothing that has ever existed before. A pile of stones, an assertion that this place, this piece of country matters for large and simple reasons.
Please rise in body or spirit to sing hymn number 88, Calm Soul of All Things. We now move more deeply into worship by lighting our chalice with words from Rumi. The poem is Surrender. You're welcome to join me as I read it or just listen if you like. Very little grows on jagged rock. Be ground, be crumbled, so wildflowers will come up where you are. You have been stony for too many years. Try something different. Surrender.
Good morning. My name's Kevin Lausch, and I get the joy of working with the youth. And today we have a lighthearted look at the idea of chasing after something so hard that you want it, and it's so hard to get, versus simply opening up your hand and letting be. And the book today is called Shh, We Have a Plan. And this was written and illustrated by Chris Houghton. Shh, we have a plan. And of course, I forgot the remote control over there. I had no plan. All right. Look, a bird. Hello, birdie. Shh, shh, we have a plan. Tiptoe, tiptoe, slowly, Now stop. Shh. Ready 1, ready 2, ready 3. Go. Look up there. Hello, birdie. Shh. Shh. We have a plan. Climbing slowly, climbing slowly. Now stop. Shh. Ready 1, ready 2, ready 3. Go. And look down there. Hello, birdie. Shh. Shh. We have a plan. Paddling slowly. Paddling slowly. Now stop. Shh. Ready 1, ready 2, ready 3. Go. Hello, birdie. Would you like some bread? 1, 2, 3. Look. So easy to accomplish. But ready 1, ready 2, ready uh-oh. Run away. And look, a squirrel. Shh, we have a plan. And at the beginning of this book is a quote that says, "Peace cannot be kept by force. It can only be achieved by understanding." Sometimes all we have to do is literally open our hand. Thank you all.
It's time for our offering. As the ushers pass the collection baskets around this morning, be mindful that your contribution is a blessing. Whether it's electronic or dropped in the basket as cash this morning, you can tuck any cash or checks into the envelope provided for the family place. Any undesignated checks or cash will go towards UUTC's mission. Our offertory music is called "The Benefits of Surrender."
Lately I've strayed from the way I had charted, estranged from my allies, I've wandered alone. I've been building walls instead of hanging windows, hunkered down and hidden, I've been living in limbo. Lately I've spent too much energy fighting the love I've been offered. I find hard to receive. I've been being tough instead of being tender, taking way too much when I should have rendered. I've been pushing back when I should be giving in. Brittle and hard, I can't bend with the wind. I've been making do when I could have had splendor. If I could accept the benefits of surrender. Lately I've thought I am not where I should be, when I could be living the here and the now. I've been in my head instead of being open, on the edge of giving up, but I am still hoping. I've been holding fast when I should be seeding ground, knowing that what goes out may yet come around. I've been making do when I could have had splendor. If I could accept the benefits of surrender.
Thank you for your generosity with the offering this morning. I have a lot of joys this morning, and one is that my family actually made it to church. Over here. Yeah. It's kind of a minor miracle, but they're here. And so is my mother-in-law, and our dear friend of our family, Rock, is also here. So I'm really grateful that they're all here today. And that there are so many friendly faces in this group this morning. I'm always grateful when I get to be here with you and when I get to share some thoughts, to share out loud some of the thoughts and questions that are percolating in me, in the hopes that they might ignite in you some spark of thought or some spark of feeling that feels hopeful or enriching or exploratory in some positive way for you. Another joy I have this morning is getting to conduct the service with my dear friend Ruthie, who we really have not introduced ourselves today, but feel free to chat with us after and we can tell you more about ourselves if that's of interest. Ruthie's been involved with the UUs for many years, since we met back at the church or the college rather, a long time ago, and I'm grateful that we get to work on the service together today with Vanessa and the rest of this amazing team at UUTC. So this spring and summer, caring for my aging father and parenting our two sons, making transitions in my work life, staying aware of political happenings, and generally dealing with being human, I was acutely aware of the limits of my own energy and the ways I was choosing to hold the weight of my burdens. I was also increasingly aware of the ways I felt myself struggling against so much. My body felt it and my spirit felt it. And yet, in the face of things not going in the way we envision them, in the face of grief and overwhelm and too muchness, surrender does not often come easily. Merriam-Webster defines surrender as yielding to power, control, or possession, to give up completely or agree to forego, especially in favor of another. Abandon, relinquish, waive, yield, let be. Take a moment, if you will, to consider your own relationship with surrender. Where does relinquishing waving, yielding, and letting be come into your life. To illustrate more specifically to you where I'm coming from, and I made a brief list, and I know this is brief because every time I think about it, I can add 10 more items to it, of what I'm not willing to surrender. So at times I struggle with surrendering to my feelings, surrendering to my biology, my body's needs, my fatigue, my changing body, its limitations, illnesses. I struggle with surrendering to the limitations of time, what can realistically be done in the minutes, hours, and days that are granted us. I struggle with surrendering financial control. I struggle with surrendering cultural ideas of whiteness, of patriarchy, and power. I struggle with surrendering to the grass growing in my yard. Sometimes have a hard time surrendering to the ever-changing patterns of my sweet children's needs and behavior. Surrendering my autonomy in my role as parent has been challenging. In caregiving of my father, I struggle with surrendering to his end-of-life process, to the bureaucracy of the medical system that we're navigating, to decisions that seem to be made for us. I don't like surrendering to the parent-child role reversal. I struggle with surrendering to letting things be undone, letting things be flawed and imperfect. I struggle with the phrase, "it is what it is," especially as applied to any sort of systemic, socially unjust, deeply entrenched system. I refuse to surrender to violence being a reality of our humanity. I don't want to surrender to the climate's demise. Like many of you, I know I'm not alone. I struggle well. Surrender is not my default. And so I've been thinking a lot in recent months about the balance in our lives, in my life, of resisting and surrendering. I was grateful last week to witness Reverend Bob's talk on what are your wishes, which I think has some tangents to this idea, in that how is it we're living and how is it we're willing to die? What is our process and our vision for what we are willing to let go? And have we communicated that, right? So lots of tangents there. I'm grateful for the opportunity to explore these ideas with you today. And I love it after I've given a talk when someone mentions something to me that has not yet dawned on me. So I invite those continuing conversations. This is a huge topic, right, of our humanity, how we surrender, how we resist. I want to become wiser about how to allow surrender and resistance to dance together in how I live my life. We don't need another binary, another black and white way of viewing how we engage with the world. It's not this or that, right? I want to become more cognizant, more conscious of how and when and why I'm fighting against something, of how and when and why I'm yielding to it. And I wonder if that awareness may influence how I allow these energies to be felt in my heart and my body in my daily life. For many of us, surrender connotes giving up or quitting. Resistance might carry tones of anger, of inflammatory language and action. I'm not interested in living fully in either of those lands, but I am interested in considering that they may not be so completely opposite. If you will, say the word surrender again to yourself. Surrender. How does your body feel? Yes, yeah. And how about resistance? What images or scenarios does this word conjure for you? Go ahead and say that, if you will, to yourself again. Resistance. And what are the sensations in your body in this moment? Yeah, so back to the dictionary, which defines resistance as some kind of refusal, right? An attempt to prevent something by action or argument. Opposition, hostility, aversion, refusal, reluctance. We can say it out loud and mean it. There is a lot to resist. Politically, especially in this country, and as the Unitarian Universalist faiths would have us act in this life, we must resist the ways in which people's rights and safety are being devalued. We must resist policies that make certain groups of humans among us invisible and paint them as lesser than. We must resist rhetoric that insults, judges, and hurts. We must resist the language and actions of hatred. We must resist discrimination and violence. Hashtag not normal resist. You've seen this bumper sticker. It's on some cars in our parking lot this morning. The organization that sells these stickers explains that, quote, "We will not accept this new reality as normal because it's not normal." The organization's purpose is to inform, inspire, to ignite change for the common good. As you may have noticed in our earlier exploration, resistance often brings energy of anger, strength, heat, noise, tension, especially if other more life-giving aspects of resistance like collaboration and excitement and hope, which are part of resistance, especially if those are absent, this high-intensity state of resistance cannot last. And yet, neither resistance nor surrender is inherently good or bad. Both can be incredibly generative. Resistance in a realm like electricity allows current to struggle to flow through the small coils of our kitchen appliances, enough to warm food. Resistance is a motivator. I've read a few inspirational pieces around these themes lately. I thought I'd share a couple people's thoughts. Lisa Rankin is an OBGYN and a mystic, which is a beautiful combination, I think. She writes in her book, Sacred Medicine, about the paradoxes of healing. One of them she writes is, quote, "To be clear in your intention to heal, to do whatever's in your power to change your life, and go for it. Don't be passive. Make it happen. Let go of attachment to outcomes and surrender to what is," she says. She keeps going, quote, "Accept the limitations that sometimes we're limited. We're not limitless. Sometimes just being able to accept those limitations creates an opening of space. That peace can actually calm the nervous system, which paradoxically can sometimes actually create the outcomes that we wanted in the first place that we can't get when we're revving our engines and grasping for the miracle." Surrender and resistance, holding hands. Many of you have been dancers in your lives, and you know when you dance, there's often a follower and a leader, and there's a tension in that movement. There's a back and forth, a give and a take, and you have to be cognizant of both energies as you're moving in order for the dance, which we've all been, I'll speak to my husband and me, we've been in the dance when it's a total struggle. You're trying to dance, it's not quite working out, and you've also all been in that dance when you're dancing and it's flowing, right? There's a give and take with the leading and the following, and the power struggle is not the focus, right? The flow of the energies together is the focus. Another thinker I really value is Courtney Martin. In her 2010 book, Do It Anyway, The New Generation of Activists, she dispels the notion that many of us were introduced to as children, that we should live our lives to save the world. She encourages us to rethink the ways we go about seeking change and seeing ourselves as some kind of savior. A lot of us resist so much because we're trying to live out this sort of dream of making everything different, right? Adrienne Marie Brown, another beautiful writer who many of you have read, I bet. She wrote Pleasure Activism. It's a recent book of hers, which seeks to reframe how we voice our resistance and chart a new way forward. And she particularly addresses the way we live in our bodies and use our bodies, surrender to our bodies as a form of resistance to systems of power that exist. And so, what if we view both surrender and resistance as empowering forms of release and engagement? What if we allow them to dovetail in our lives, more skillfully discerning whether we're called to sink into the tide of what is or to push our weight heavily against it? Surrender, it turns out, can be a deep and powerful form of resistance, surrendering to our creative impulses, surrendering to our intuitive knowledge of who we are, surrendering as Tricia Hershey's NAP ministry, which I mentioned in a previous talk with this congregation. She says, surrendering to our need to rest is resistance. These forms of surrender are not a giving up. In backing away from others' expectations and sinking into our own authenticity, we surrender, and that is our resistance. Back to Courtney Martin's thoughts on activism. I am no longer 18 and idealistic, but I am 45 and idealistic. And I still believe that we can change this world for the better, that we can come together in our mutual love for this life and support one another and the planet. But I'm also old enough to acknowledge that the ways we advocate for change really matter. That our resistance must be tempered in order to be physically, emotionally, psychologically, and collectively sustainable. And so back to surrender we go. A friend gifted me this beautiful woodcut print when our first child, who is now almost as tall as I am, was born. The print depicted a mother breastfeeding an infant. The mother's face was largely out of the work of art, and the focus was on her arms and her infant nursing at her breast, with the word surrender at the bottom of the woodcut. It was a beautiful piece. And when I was done nursing our first child, I gave it away. I was done surrendering. I dutifully surrendered my body, my time, my sleep, my energy, my life force, every possible thing that I had. And now this chapter was done. So no more surrender. Which is funny, of course, right? It's funny given that all of life is a form of surrender, and maybe parenting, to Rabbit's point earlier, right? Maybe parenting particularly so. So abandon, relinquish, wave, yield. The energy of surrender is soft and slow. Buddhism and other schools of thinking tout surrendering as the jam. Teacher Donna Booth calls surrender, quote, a ridiculously awesome practice, which is to say, she thinks it's worth trying to give up some of our myriad bids of control of our life. Surrender, it turns out, may be soft and slow, but it is also wicked courageous, vulnerable, and really, really, really hard to do. I'm curious. Can we look to nature to teach us about how to flow from season to season? To let go of what's gone and to move into what is next? Can we cultivate curiosity and acceptance? Can we come from a place of love, often where surrender lives, instead of fear, which often breeds resistance? And so here's the idea, or an idea I'm exploring myself and also with you here today. Perhaps the heart of the journey is to discern when we are called to resistance, because there are times, and when surrendering is most skillful, because these times exist also. And perhaps step one is just to notice, to observe. When are we practicing resistance? And when are we practicing surrender? And are we aware of our default mode of engagement? Are we being as skillful and as loving as we can in noticing when we're releasing into something, or in the same vein, pushing against it? I have no answers in many questions. And at this juncture, I'm wondering where in our lives it would be braver to say, I let go control of this, than to keep tightening our grip. And where is it the most brave, the most necessary, to stick to our convictions, to push against, to fight, instead of saying, this is too much, I give up. We don't just resist political policies, of course, we do resist our emotions, we resist changes in our cycles of life, we resist asking for help, that's a big one. We resist different views of reality that don't jibe with our own. We resist the signals and needs of our bodies. Most of us do that on a very regular basis. The Berkeley Wellbeing Institute asserts that, quote, trying too hard to control our lives is stressful and ultimately fruitless. Very likely some validity in that statement. But fruitless is another button word for many of us. And my dear friend Ruthie and I touched on these themes in conversation over the summer. Ruthie is an incredibly talented and compassionate human who devotes much of her time and energy to being fully present in supporting others' well-being. And she shared with me her view that resistance, despite the saying, is decidedly not futile. Resistance is not futile. That, she said, is just what a would-be opponent would say when they want to convince you to give up. We know too well that life is filled with struggle. What would hold it up without resistance? The balancing agent of complacency and convention. Left unopposed, wouldn't oppression, prejudice, and hate run wild? In the face of injustice, we do resist. But, and here is a beautiful point from my old friend, if resistance grows from reluctance, habit, control, domination, or fear, it loses its positive charge. It loses its positive charge and it acts to tear down, to invalidate, and to ignore rather than to hold up, build up, support, and change. Adrian Rich's beautiful poem, which I read to open the service today, illustrates this tender dance, this push-pull, this stepping forward and back, this flowing, ever-evolving state of how we lead and follow. I'd like to share her words with you again, just so we can get those a little bit into our hearts. She writes, "Stone by stone, I pile this cairn of my intention. With the noon's weight on my back, exposed and vulnerable, across the slanting fields, which I love but cannot save from floods that are to come, can only fasten down with the work of my hands these painfully assembled stones in the shape of nothing that has ever existed before. A pile of stones, an assertion that this piece of country matters for large and simple reasons." What are we doing with the work of our hands? What are we supporting and tearing down? What are we leaning into and running away from, and why? Friends, I love this life. I do not want to spend it fighting. I'm also not giving up on it. If we must surrender, may we surrender our desire to dominate, our weapons, our judgment of others, our greed, our egos, our sureness of having all the answers. If we must resist, may each act of our pushing against contribute to the collective good. May our opposition breed deep compassion, kindness, and love. Thank you. Ruthie and I would love to close the service by sharing a song we came across a few years ago by Lindsay Scott. It's recorded here with Lindsay and Lisa Littlebird. If you will, stand and join us in singing. We'll listen one time through to Lindsay and Lisa sing the words. It's a circular song. We're going to sing it for several minutes. So we'll listen to them sing it through one time through, and then Ruthie and I, with our beautiful and imperfect voices, will belt out the words along with you, and we'll just engage in this circular song for a few minutes. As you're able, please stand if you'd like.
You don't have to know the way knows the way. You don't have to plan the way, trust the way, feel your way. The way knows, the way knows, the way knows the way. You don't have to know the way knows the way. You don't have to plan the way, trust the way, feel your way. The way knows, the way knows, the way knows the way. You don't have to know the way knows the way. You don't have to plan the way. You don't have to know the way. The way knows the way. You don't have to plan the way. Trust the way. Feel your way. The way knows. The way knows. The way knows the way. You don't have to know the way. The way knows the way. You don't have to plan the way. Trust the way. Feel your way. The way knows. The way knows. The way knows the way. You don't have to know the way. The way knows the way. You don't have to plan the way. Trust the way. Feel your way. The way knows. The way knows. The way knows the way. You don't have to know the way. The way knows the way. You don't have to plan the way. Trust the way. Feel your way. The way knows. The way knows. The way knows the way. You don't have to know the way. The way knows the way. You don't have to plan the way. Trust the way. Feel your way. The way knows. The way knows. The way knows the way.
Thank you for singing along with us today. May we all be curious about how the way, all the various ways, will reveal themselves to us. Thank you for inviting me to explore some thoughts this morning. Thank you for making space. Thank you for your hearts. Wishing you a beautiful day.